Commander Jake Morrison sat in his office aboard Earth Station Alpha, staring at the strange message that had arrived 3 hours ago. The communication came from somewhere deep in space, from aliens he had never heard of before. The message was written in perfect English, which made him feel uneasy. "Sir, you wanted to see me?" Lieutenant Amy Carter knocked on the door and stepped inside. She was a small woman with short brown hair and smart eyes. Jake had worked with her for 2 years, and she was the best tactical officer he had ever met. "Look at this," Jake said, turning his computer screen toward her. "Tell me what you think." Amy read the message carefully. Her face changed as she read each line. "This is from the Galactic Council. They want us to join something called the Grand War Simulation. 24 different alien species will fight in a fake battle." "Keep reading," Jake said. Amy continued. "Reading, the winner gets special trading rights in new territory, the losers get nothing. And they want humans to represent Earth." She looked up at Jake. "Is this real?" The communication came through our deep space sensors. The signal was strong and clear. "Either this is real, or someone is playing a very expensive joke," Jake said. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see Earth spinning. Slowly below them. "What does the simulation involve?" Amy asked. "Combat, but they say all weapons will be turned off. No guns, no knives, no bombs. Nothing that can hurt people will work inside the simulation." Jake turned back to Amy. "They want 4 humans to represent our entire species." Amy was quiet for a moment. "Who would you choose?" Jake had already thought about this. "You, for sure. Your brain works differently than everyone else. You see things other people miss." He paused. "Sergeant Rick Davis from Demolitions. He knows how to break things and build things. And Corporal Lisa Stone from Special Forces. She thinks fast and moves faster. What about you?" Amy asked. "Someone has to lead the team," Jake said with a small smile. 2 hours later, Jake sat in the conference room with his chosen team. Rick Davis was a big man with thick arms and a beard. He had spent 10 years blowing things up for the military, before he learned how to build things instead. Lisa Stone was tall and thin, with quick movements and eyes that never stopped watching everything around her. "So let me get this straight," Rick said, leaning back in his chair. "Aliens want us to fight other aliens in a fake war, and we cannot use any weapons?" "That is correct," Jake said. "And if we win, Earth gets better deals when we trade with aliens?" Lisa asked. "Yes," Jake said. Rick laughed. "And if we lose, Earth stays where it is now. No new benefits. No new territory," Jake said. Amy looked at the message again. "It says here that the simulation will feel completely real to us. We will feel pain if we get hurt. We can get tired and hungry. But if we die in the simulation, we just wake up and go home. How do we win?" Lisa asked. Jake. "Read from the message. Be the last team standing. Eliminate other teams. Survive until the end." "Without weapons," Rick said, shaking his head. "The other aliens probably have claws and teeth and armor. What do we have?" "Our brains," Amy said quietly. "Will that be enough?" Lisa asked. Jake looked at each member of his team. "I do not know. But this is the chance for humanity to join the galaxy as an equal. If we do not try, we will always wonder what might have been." The team agreed to accept the challenge. 3 days later, they boarded a small Earth ship and flew to the meeting point near Kepler 442b. The planet was huge and green, with 3 moons circling around it. Above the planet, a massive space station waited for them. Jake had never seen anything like the station. It was bigger than any human building, with sections that spun slowly and parts that glowed with strange lights. Ships from different worlds were docked all around it. Some ships looked like metal insects, others looked like crystals. One ship seemed to be made of living wood. "Look at that," Amy whispered as their ship approached the docking bay. Through the windows, they could see aliens walking around inside the station. A group of tall, thin creatures with too many arms moved past their window. Behind them, something that looked like a walking rock talked to a being made of blue light. "I think we are not in Kansas anymore," Rick said. Their ship docked with a soft bump. The airlock opened, and they stepped into the alien station. The air smelled different, like flowers and metal and something Jake could not identify. The gravity felt normal, but the ceiling was much higher than any human building. A creature approached them. It looked like a person, but its skin was silver and its eyes were too big. When it spoke, the words came from a device on its chest. Not from its mouth. Welcome, humans. I am Ambassador Zixtel of the Viridian Empire. You are here for the Grand War simulation. Yes, Jake said. I am Commander Jake Morrison. This is my team. Follow me, Zixtel said. The other species are? Waiting, they walked through corridors filled with beings Jake had never imagined. Some were tall, some were short. Some had fur, some had scales, some seemed to be made of energy. All of them stared at the humans as they passed. How many species are in the galaxy? Amy asked quietly. More than you can count, Zixtel said. But only 24 are skilled enough to compete in the simulation. They entered a huge room with a dome ceiling. 23 groups of aliens stood in different areas of the room. Jake could hear dozens of different languages being spoken at once, but somehow he understood all of them. The translation device in his ear was working perfectly. The humans have arrived, announced a voice from everywhere at once. The Grand War simulation can now begin. A new alien appeared in the center of the room. This one was huge, with thick, gray skin and small eyes. Its voice was deep and slow. I am Overseer Quendok. I will explain the rules. The alien looked around the room. You will enter a simulated city. The city will get smaller over time, forcing you to meet other teams. The last team alive wins. What weapons can we use? Asked a creature that looked like a giant insect. No weapons will function in the simulation, Quendok said. No guns, no knives, no bombs, no energy weapons. Nothing designed to cause harm will work. Jake felt his stomach drop. He looked at his team. They were all thinking the same thing. What can we use? Asked something that looked like a tree with legs. Whatever you find in the city. Furniture. Tools, everyday objects. But remember, if the simulation decides something is being used as a weapon, it will disappear. Rick whispered to Jake. We are in trouble. Around the room, other species seemed excited. The insect creatures clicked happily to each other. A group of rock-like beings rumbled with what might have been laughter. Several teams of aliens with natural armor and claws looked confident. The simulation begins in 1 hour, Quendok announced. Prepare yourselves. As the aliens began to leave the room, Jake heard conversations in the translated languages. The humans look weak, said one voice. They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons, said another. This will be easy, said a third. Amy moved closer to Jake. They think we are going to lose quickly. Maybe we will, Jake said quietly, but we are not going to make it easy for them. Lisa looked around at the departing aliens. They do not know humans very well, do they? No, Jake said. And maybe that will help us. As they walked back to their preparation room, Jake thought about what they were facing. Every other species seemed to have natural advantages. Humans had technology, but technology would not work in the simulation. Humans had weapons, but weapons were not allowed. What did humans have that other species did not? He was about to find out. Jake opened his eyes and found himself standing in the middle of a strange street. The buildings around him looked like nothing he had ever seen on Earth. Some were tall and twisted like corkscrews. Others were flat and wide with holes instead of windows. The sky above was purple, and 2 suns shined down on the city. Jake, are you there? Amy's voice came through his earpiece. I am here, Jake said, looking around. Where are you? About 2 blocks north of you. I can see a big red building with spikes. Amy sounded calm, but Jake could hear worry in her voice. I see it, Jake said. The building was impossible to miss. It looked like a giant red sea urchin made of metal. Rick, Lisa, where are you? Jake asked. I am in some kind of market, Rick said. There are stalls everywhere, but no people. Lots of strange food and tools I do not recognize. I am near what looks like houses, Lisa said. Small buildings with round doors, everything is empty. Jake started walking toward the red building. The street felt real under his feet. The air smelled like rain and something sweet he could not identify. When he touched a wall, it felt cold and smooth. This does not feel like a simulation, Jake said. The message said it would feel completely real, Amy reminded him. We need to find each other and then explore. Jake turned a corner and saw Amy, standing next to the red building. She was holding something in her hands and examining it carefully. What did you find? Jake asked as he approached her. A metal rod, Amy said, showing him a piece of metal about as long as her arm. I thought maybe we could use it as a weapon, but watch this. She lifted the rod like a club and swung it at the building wall. The rod disappeared from her hands before it touched the wall. 1 second, it was there. The next second, it was gone. The simulation knows, Jake said. It can tell when we are trying to use something as a weapon? Rick's voice came through their earpieces. I found the same thing. I tried to make a spear from a long piece of wood. As soon as I pointed it at anything, it vanished. We need to be smarter, Jake said. Let us meet at Rick's location. We can explore together. 10 minutes later, the 4 humans stood together in the market Rick had found. The place was huge, with hundreds of stalls selling things from different worlds. Jake saw foods that glowed, tools that moved by themselves, and clothes made from materials that shifted colors. Look at all this stuff, Lisa said, picking up something that looked like a hammer. Maybe we can find something useful. She lifted the hammer and swung it down toward a wooden board. The hammer disappeared just before it hit. Same thing, she said with frustration. The simulation is too smart. Amy was looking at a stall that sold eating utensils. There were spoons, forks, and knives, but they were all different shapes and sizes. Some were made for creatures with claws. Others were made for beings with tentacles instead of hands. What? If we are thinking about this wrong, Amy said. What do you mean? Jake asked. The simulation stops us when we try to use things as weapons. But what if we use things exactly as they were meant to be used? Rick looked confused. You mean use a spoon as a spoon? Exactly, Amy said. She picked up a small spoon and looked around. At another stall, she found some kind of alien soup in a bowl. She dipped the spoon in the soup and took a small taste. The spoon did not disappear. Nothing happened. It works when you use it correctly, Amy said. Before anyone could respond, they heard a loud roar from somewhere in the city. Then another roar answered from a different direction. The other teams are starting to fight, Jake said. We need to move. They gathered useful items from the market. Jake took a coil of rope. Amy found a toolbox with strange but familiar-looking tools. Rick collected some bottles that looked like cleaning supplies. Lisa picked up several eating utensils and put them in her pockets. Why do you want those? Rick asked. I am not sure yet, Lisa said, but Amy is right. If we can only use things as they were meant to be used, then we need to think differently about what these things are meant for. They left the market and moved deeper into the city. The buildings here were taller and closer together. Jake could hear sounds of fighting coming from several directions. Something that sounded like metal hitting stone. Alien voices shouting. In languages the translators could not understand. The other teams are not having trouble with the weapon rule, Amy said. They do not need weapons, Jake said. Most of them have natural ones. They turned a corner and saw their first battle. 3 insect-like creatures were fighting 2 beings that looked like walking rocks. The insects were using their sharp claws to attack, while the rock beings were throwing pieces of themselves that grew back immediately. Their bodies are weapons, Rick whispered. The simulation cannot take away parts of their bodies. One of the rock beings noticed the humans watching. It roared and threw a boulder-sized piece of itself at them. Jake and his team scattered. Running in different directions, Jake ran down a narrow alley with Amy close behind him. The rock being was too big to follow them into the tight space, but they could hear it trying to break through the walls. We need to find another way out, Amy said, at the end of the alley. They found a door that led into one of the strange buildings. Inside, it looked like someone's home, but for a very different kind of person. The furniture was all wrong shapes, and there were things hanging from the ceiling that might have been lights or decorations. "Look at this," Amy said, pointing to what looked like a kitchen area. There were pots and pans, but they were made for someone with 4 arms. There was also a stove that used some kind of energy instead of fire. Jake picked up one of the pots. It was heavy and made of thick metal. "I wonder if this counts as a weapon if I hit someone with it." "Try using it as a pot first," Amy suggested. Jake found some water and poured it into the pot. Then he figured out how to turn on the strange stove. The water began to heat up immediately. "It works," Jake said. "As long as I am cooking with it, the simulation thinks it is being used correctly." Amy smiled. "Now we are getting somewhere." They heard Rick's voice through their earpieces. "Jake, we have a problem. There is something big coming this way, and it does not look friendly." "Where are you?" Jake asked. 2 blocks south of where we started. Near a blue building that looks like a pyramid." Jake and Amy left the house and ran toward Rick's location. As they ran through the streets, they saw more signs of the fighting. Walls were broken. Strange burn marks covered some buildings. In one place, the ground was covered with a sticky substance that made their feet stick to it. They found Rick and Lisa hiding behind the blue pyramid building. Rick pointed around the corner. "Look at that thing," he whispered. Jake looked carefully around the corner and saw something that made his stomach feel cold. It was huge, maybe 3 times taller than a human. It had thick gray skin covered in spikes and arms that ended in claws the size of swords. Its eyes glowed red, and when it breathed, steam came out of its nose. "That is one of the HFY warriors," Lisa said. "I heard some of the other aliens talking about them. They are supposed to be nearly impossible to kill." The creature was looking around, obviously hunting for other teams to fight. When it turned its head, Jake could see that its teeth were as long as his fingers. "How do we fight something like that?" Rick asked. "We do not fight it," Amy said. "We think?" She looked around at the items they had collected. The rope, the tools, the cleaning supplies, the eating utensils. None of them looked like they could hurt the HFY warrior. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Remember what I said about using things as they were meant to be used?" Amy said, "A rope is meant for tying things or climbing. Cleaning supplies are meant for cleaning. Tools are meant for building or fixing things. And eating utensils are meant for eating," Lisa added. Understanding what Amy was thinking, the HFY warrior started moving in their direction. Its heavy footsteps shook the ground. "Whatever we are going to do, we need to do it fast," Jake said. Amy looked at the cleaning supplies Rick had collected. "Rick, what do you think would happen if we mixed some of these chemicals together?" "Depends on what they are," Rick said, examining the bottles. "Some of these look like they might make foam. Others might make smoke. And what is foam used for?" Amy asked. Rick smiled as he understood. "Cleaning. If we are cleaning something, then we are using the foam correctly." The HFY warrior rounded the corner and saw them. It roared so loudly that windows in nearby buildings shattered. Then it charged toward them, its claws ready to tear them apart. "Now would be good," Jake said. Rick quickly mixed 2 of the cleaning chemicals in a pot Amy had found. The mixture began to bubble and foam immediately. White foam poured out of the pot and spread across the ground. The HFY warrior hit the foam and immediately slipped. Its feet could not grip the slippery surface, and it fell hard on its back. The creature roared with anger and confusion, trying to stand up but slipping every time. "Lisa now," Amy said. Lisa ran forward with a large spoon in her hand. But instead of trying to hit the creature, she scooped up some of the thick alien soup they had found earlier, and quickly fed it to the confused HFY warrior. The soup contained something that made most aliens very sleepy. The HFY warrior's eyes began to close, and its movements became slow and clumsy. Within minutes, the fearsome creature was snoring peacefully on the foam-covered ground. The sleeping HFY warrior gave Jake's team their first real hope. As they moved away from the foam-covered area, Amy started making a list of everything they had learned so far. "The simulation is smart, but it follows rules," she said, writing. in a small notebook she had found. Objects work when we use them correctly. They disappear when we try to make them into weapons. So we need to find ways to use normal things in ways that help us win, Lisa said. Exactly, Amy said. A rope is for climbing or tying. But if someone gets tangled in a rope while we are trying to tie something else, that is not our fault. Rick laughed. You want to have accidents on purpose. Something like that, Amy agreed. They spent the next hour exploring the city and collecting more items. Jake found a toolbox full of screwdrivers, wrenches, and hammers. Amy discovered a storage room filled with different kinds of rope and wire. Rick located a cleaning closet with dozens of bottles and sprays. Lisa gathered cooking utensils from several different alien kitchens. As they worked, they could hear the sounds of other battles around the city. Sometimes they heard roars of victory. Sometimes they heard the strange sound that meant a team had been eliminated and removed from the simulation. How many teams are left? Jake asked, checking his communicator. 18, Amy said, reading the display. 6 teams eliminated already. The strong ones are winning, Rick said. Just like everyone expected. They found shelter in a building that looked like an alien school. The rooms were filled with desks and chairs, but they were sized for many different kinds of creatures. Some desks were tiny, for beings no bigger than cats. Others were huge, for creatures as big as elephants. This gives me an idea, Amy said. Looking at all the furniture, she began arranging desks and chairs in a specific pattern. To anyone watching, it would look like she was simply cleaning up the classroom, putting furniture back where it belonged. But the pattern she created would funnel anyone entering the room into a narrow path. If someone chases us in here, they will have to follow this path, she explained. And along this path we can set up more accidents, Lisa understood immediately. She began placing small rugs along the path. To the simulation, she was decorating the room, making it look nice. But the rugs were positioned where running feet would slip on them. Rick found a supply closet full of cleaning equipment. He set up several mop buckets along the path, filled with soapy water. He was getting ready to clean the floor, which was exactly what the buckets were meant for. Jake positioned himself near the window with a long coil of rope. He tied one end to his belt and began practicing with the rope as if he was learning to climb. The simulation saw this as proper rope usage. They did not have to wait long. 20 minutes later, they heard heavy footsteps approaching the building. Jake looked out the window and saw 3 aliens coming toward them. 2 looked like the insect creatures they had seen before. The third was something new, a tall being covered in blue scales with 4 arms and yellow eyes. Company coming, Jake whispered. The 3 aliens entered the building and immediately spotted the humans. The scaled creature hissed something in its own language, and all 3 began to charge forward. They entered the classroom and were immediately funneled into the narrow path Amy had created. The first insect creature hit the first rug and stumbled, but kept running. It hit the second rug and fell forward into one of Rick's mop buckets. Soapy water splashed everywhere. The creature slipped and slid across the wet floor, crashing into a pile of chairs. It was not hurt, but it was tangled up and confused. The second insect creature tried to jump over the water, but landed on another rug. Its feet went out from under it, and it fell hard on its back. The scaled creature was smarter. It saw what had happened to its teammates and tried to climb over the desks instead of following the path. But Jake was ready. He threw his rope up toward the ceiling as if he was trying to climb up to fix something. The rope caught on a light fixture and swung back down. The scaled creature ran right into the swinging rope and got tangled up in it. Jake pulled on the rope, not to hurt the creature, but to help it get untangled. This looked like he was being helpful, which was what the simulation expected. But every time he pulled, the creature got more tangled instead of less. Within minutes, all 3 attacking aliens were either stuck, tangled, or too confused to fight. Lisa approached them with her collection of spoons and small bowls. Feeding time, she said with a smile. She had mixed different alien foods together to create meals that would make the creatures sleepy or sick to their stomachs. Since she was feeding them, the simulation saw this as proper use of eating utensils. The first insect creature tried to refuse the food, but Lisa was patient. She waited until it opened its mouth to hiss at her, then quickly spooned the mixture. Inside, the creature's eyes went wide, then slowly closed as it fell asleep. The other two aliens met the same fate. Soon all three were unconscious on the classroom floor. "That makes 4 eliminations for us," Amy said, updating her notebook. "The other teams are going to notice," Rick warned. 4 eliminations from the weakest-looking team. "They will start paying attention to us," Jake nodded. "We need to be more careful, and we need better tools." They left the school and continued exploring. In the next district, they found what looked like a construction site. There were tools everywhere, hammers, saws, drills, and machines they did not recognize. "Look at all this," Rick said, his eyes bright with excitement. "I can build anything with these tools. What do you want?" "To build?" Amy asked. Rick was already examining a pile of metal pipes and wooden boards. "Furniture," he said. "The simulation thinks construction tools are for building things, so we build things." He began assembling what looked like a simple bench. But Rick was clever with his design. The bench had hidden spaces where they could store their supplies. It also had parts that could be quickly rearranged into barriers or ramps. Amy found electrical equipment and began wiring lights. To anyone watching, she was simply installing lighting in the area. But the lights were positioned to blind anyone approaching from certain directions. Lisa discovered a paint storage area and began painting signs. The signs looked like they were meant to help people find their way around the construction site. But Lisa wrote the signs in ways that would confuse aliens who could not read human languages, directing them into dead ends or dangerous areas. Jake used carpentry tools to build what looked like playground equipment. Swings, slides, and climbing. Structures. Everything looked innocent and fun. But Jake designed each piece to work as a trap for unwary enemies. As they worked, they heard explosions and roars from other parts of the city. The battles were getting more intense as the remaining teams encountered each other. 14 teams left, Amy reported, checking her communicator. "We are doing better than anyone expected," Lisa said. "Do not get overconfident," Jake warned. "The teams that are left are the strongest ones. They will not fall for simple tricks." As if his words had summoned trouble, they heard a new sound. It was like singing, but the melody was strange and made their heads feel dizzy. The sound was getting closer. "What is that?" Rick asked, holding his head. "Ethereal collective," Amy said, reading from her notes about the different alien species. "They use sound and energy as weapons. The singing does something to your brain." The singing got louder. Jake could feel his thoughts becoming fuzzy and hard to control. His teammates were swaying on their feet, their eyes unfocused. "We need to block the sound," Jake said, fighting to think clearly. Rick stumbled to his tool collection and found ear protection gear. Construction workers used it to protect their hearing from loud machinery. He threw sets to each of his teammates. The moment they put on the ear protection, their heads cleared. The singing could no longer affect them. "Now what?" Lisa asked, her voice muffled by the ear protection. 3 beings made of pure light floated into the construction area. They looked like ghosts made of blue and white energy. When they saw that their singing was not working, they began to glow brighter, preparing a different kind of attack. Jake thought quickly. The construction site had large metal sheets that workers used to protect against welding sparks. He grabbed one and held it like a shield. The ethereal beings shot beams of energy at the humans. The beams hit Jake's metal sheet and bounced away harmlessly. He was using the metal sheet exactly as it was designed to protect against energy. Amy, Rick, and Lisa grabbed their own metal sheets. Soon all 4 humans were protected behind proper safety equipment. "How do we fight beings made of energy?" Rick asked. Amy looked around the construction site. Her eyes stopped on a large machine that looked like a generator. "What does a generator do?" she asked. "It makes electricity," Rick said. "And what happens when you connect electricity to metal?" Amy continued. Rick smiled as he understood. You make a cage that energy cannot pass through. Working quickly, Rick started the generator and began connecting metal cables to all the metal structures Jake had built. Soon, the entire construction area was surrounded by an electrical field. The ethereal beings tried to float closer, but the electrical field pushed them back. They could not enter the protected area without being disrupted by the electricity. Lisa approached the edge of the field with a large metal spoon and a bowl. Jake watched the city boundary slowly moving inward, forcing all the remaining teams into a smaller area. The purple sky above them was getting darker, and both suns were starting to set. The simulation was entering its final phase. 8 teams left, Amy said, checking her communicator. We eliminated 7 teams by ourselves. The other species are talking about us, Lisa said, listening to radio chatter through her earpiece. They are calling us the impossible humans and the tool. Masters, Rick laughed as he packed up his construction equipment. They finally figured out we are dangerous. That is the problem, Jake said. Now they will work together to stop us. As if to prove his point, they heard a new sound from the city center. It was not the chaos of random battles. It was organized, coordinated, multiple species working together with a single purpose. They are coming for us, Amy said quietly. Jake looked around their current position. They were in what looked like a shopping district, surrounded by stores and markets. The buildings were tall and close together, with narrow streets between them. We cannot run anymore, Jake said. The boundary is too small. We have to make our stand here. Against how many? Rick asked. Amy was listening to radio signals and counting voices. At least 4 different species. Maybe 20 individual aliens, all working together. Lisa checked her supplies. I have enough feeding utensils for maybe 10 more eliminations. But not 20, Jake thought quickly. They had survived this long by being smarter than their enemies, not stronger. But intelligence had limits when facing overwhelming numbers. We need to change the rules, he said finally. What do you mean? Amy asked. Right now, they are hunting us. We need to make them hunt each other instead. Jake looked at the shopping district around them. There were clothing stores, food markets, electronic shops, and toy stores. Hundreds of items that could be used for their intended purposes. Amy, what do you know about alien psychology? Jake asked. Different species have different trigger behaviors, Amy said, understanding where Jake was thinking. Some are territorial, some are competitive. Some have natural fear responses. Can we use that? Amy smiled. Give me 10 minutes with these shops, and I can make them all hate each other. The team split up and began their most ambitious project yet. Amy went to the electronics store and started setting up communication devices. To anyone watching, she was testing equipment to make sure it worked properly. Rick found a toy store and began building what looked like playground equipment. Bright, colorful structures that would catch attention from far away. Lisa located a food court and started preparing meals. Dozens of different dishes using ingredients from across the galaxy. Jake went to a clothing store and began arranging mannequins. He dressed them in uniforms and armor from different alien cultures, positioning them like they were displaying the clothing properly. What exactly are we doing? Rick asked through his earpiece. Creating a trap that works on alien minds instead of alien bodies? Jake explained. Amy, are you ready with the communications? Ready, Amy said. I can broadcast different messages on the frequencies each species uses to talk to their own kind. What messages? Lisa asked. Amy had been studying the alien languages and psychology. Notes all day. Messages that will make each species think the other species betrayed them or insulted them. Jake positioned the last mannequin and stepped back to look at his work. The display looked like warriors from different alien cultures standing in aggressive poses as if they were challenging each other to fight. Lisa, how are the meals coming? Jake asked. Ready, Lisa said. I made foods that each species considers special or sacred. If they see other species eating their sacred food, they will get angry. Rick, what about the playground? Finished, Rick said. It looks like playground equipment, but it is actually arranged to give each species a good place to attack the others from. They will all think they found the perfect ambush spot. Jake looked around the shopping district one more time. Everything was in place. Amy, start broadcasting. Amy activated the communication devices. She began sending messages in different alien languages, making it sound like each species was insulting the others. The first message went to the insect creatures. The rock people say your hive is weak and your queen is stupid. The second message went to the rock beings. The insect creatures say you are slow and dumb, good only for building walls. The third message went to the energy beings. The physical species say you are not real warriors because you have no solid bodies. The fourth message went to a new group approaching. Everyone agrees that your species should not be in this competition. Within minutes, they could hear angry responses on all the radio frequencies. The alliance of alien species was starting to argue with each other. Phase 2, Jake said. Rick activated the colorful structures he had built. They began flashing lights and making sounds designed to attract attention from across the district. To the aliens, it would look like some kind of signal or communication device. Each species would think the others were trying to coordinate against them. Phase 3, Jake said. Lisa began cooking the sacred foods, letting the smells drift across the shopping district. The aromas would reach the different alien groups and make them think their enemies were stealing or disrespecting their culture. Phase 4, Jake said. Amy began broadcasting new messages, but this time she made them sound like each species was claiming to have found the perfect attack position and inviting others to come and try to take it from us. Jake and his team hid in a store with large windows where they could watch what happened next. The first group to arrive was 3 insect creatures. They saw Rick's colorful structures and immediately claimed them as their own strategic position. They climbed up on the equipment and began setting up for an ambush. The second group was 2 rock beings. They smelled their sacred stone fruit being cooked in Lisa's food court and roared with anger. They began throwing pieces of themselves at the food stalls, trying to stop what they saw as disrespect to their culture. The third group was the energy beings. They saw Jake's mannequin display and interpreted it as a challenge to combat. They began glowing brighter, preparing for battle. The fourth group was something new, tall aliens with silver skin and too many eyes. They heard Amy's radio messages and decided that all the other species were working together against them. Here we go, Jake whispered. The insect creatures on Rick's playground. Equipment saw the rock beings destroying the food court, they thought. The rock beings were trying to eliminate the food supply so everyone else would starve. The rock beings saw the energy beings glowing near the mannequin display. They thought the energy beings were preparing to attack. The energy beings saw the silver-skinned aliens approaching and assumed they were reinforcements for the other species. The silver-skinned aliens saw everyone else in combat positions and decided they were under attack. What happened next was exactly what Jake had hoped for. All 4 species began fighting each other at the same time. The insect creatures jumped down from their playground positions and attacked the rock beings. The rock beings threw pieces of themselves at the energy beings. The energy beings shot beams of light at the silver-skinned aliens. The silver-skinned aliens used some kind of sonic weapon against everyone. Continued broadcasting confusing messages. Rick made his playground equipment flash different colors, making each species think the others were signaling for more reinforcements. Lisa kept cooking sacred foods from different cultures, making everyone angrier. Jake rearranged his mannequins to look like they were celebrating victories over fallen enemies. The battle lasted for almost an hour. Species that had been working together 5 minutes earlier were now trying to eliminate each other. They forgot completely about hunting the humans. When the chaos finally ended, only 3 aliens were still conscious. 2 insect creatures and 1 energy being. All the others had been eliminated or knocked unconscious. Now, Jake said. The human team emerged from their hiding place. The 3 remaining aliens were too tired and confused to fight effectively. Lisa approached them with her feeding utensils and carefully served them meals designed to make them sleepy. Within minutes, the shopping district was quiet. 4 teams left, Amy said, checking her communicator. Us and 3 others. Where are the other teams? Rick asked. Amy studied the map display. 1 team is in the government district. 1 is in the industrial area. 1 is in what looks like a park. Jake looked at his tired teammates. They had been fighting for hours, and the final phase was about to begin. The boundary is going to shrink again soon, he said. The last 3 teams will be forced together in the city center. What do we do? Lisa asked. Jake looked around the destroyed shopping district. His team had just eliminated an entire alliance of alien species without firing a shot or throwing a punch. They had done it using nothing but psychology and clever use of everyday objects. We prepare for the final battle, Jake said. But this time we will not be fighting aliens. What do you mean? Amy asked. Jake smiled. The last 3 teams will all be the strongest, smartest, and most dangerous aliens in the galaxy. They will not fall for tricks or get distracted by fake messages. So how do we beat them? Rick asked. By being better humans than they are aliens. The city boundary had shrunk to just 4 blocks around the central plaza. Jake could see the other 3 remaining teams from his position on top of a small building. Each team had found high ground and was watching the others carefully. To the north, 3 Xanthari warriors stood together like silver statues. They moved in perfect coordination, sharing thoughts through their hive mind connection. Jake had read about them in the briefing materials. When they worked together, they could predict and counter almost any attack. To the east, a single ethereal being floated above a tall tower. This one was different from the others they had faced. It glowed brighter and moved with more purpose. Jake guessed it was one of their leaders, far more powerful than the ordinary soldiers. To the west, 2 Korthic warriors waited in the ruins of a destroyed building. These were bigger than the one they had defeated earlier. Their claws were longer. Their armor was thicker, and their eyes burned with intelligence as well as rage. 4 teams, 8 aliens, 4 humans, Amy said quietly. And they are all watching us. They learned from watching the other teams fight us, Rick said. They will not fall for the tricks that worked before. Jake studied the central plaza below them. It was a wide open space with a few scattered buildings. There was nowhere to hide and nowhere to run. The final battle would happen down there, and it would happen soon. What do we have left? Jake asked. Amy checked their supplies. Not much. Most of our tools got used up in the shopping district. We have some rope, a few eating utensils, some cleaning supplies, and whatever we can find down there. Lisa pointed to the plaza. There is a building in the center that looks like a laboratory. Or research center. Maybe we can find something useful inside. We need to move fast, Jake said. The boundary will shrink again in 30 minutes. Then we will all be forced into that plaza together. They climbed down from their building and ran toward the central plaza. Jake could feel the other teams watching them, but nobody attacked yet. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen when they were all forced together. The laboratory building was full of strange equipment and containers holding specimens from different worlds. Jake saw plants that glowed in the dark, crystals that hummed with energy, and liquids that changed colors when he looked at them. This is a xenobiology lab, Amy said, reading signs on the walls. They study alien life forms here. Rick found a storage room full of research equipment. Microscopes, computers, sensors, and tools for handling dangerous specimens safely. Look at all this science equipment, Rick said. We can use these for experiments and research. Lisa discovered a cafeteria area where the researchers ate their meals. It was stocked with food and eating utensils from many different worlds. More spoons, she said with a smile. And some very interesting foods? Jake found the most important thing, a detailed guide to the alien specimens stored in the laboratory. He read quickly, looking for anything that might help them. Listen to this, he said. Specimen 47, Somnolus bacteria. Causes immediate deep sleep in 78% of known species. Specimen 23, confusion spores. disrupts neural connections and causes disorientation. Specimen 12, paralysis moss. Temporarily stops voluntary muscle movement. Biological weapons? Amy asked. Research specimens? Jake corrected. If we are doing scientific research, then we are using them correctly. Outside, the boundary was shrinking again. Jake could see the other teams moving toward the plaza. Time was running out. New plan, Jake said. Amy, can you use this science equipment to create experiments? Yes, Amy said, looking at the laboratory setup. I can run tests on the specimens, measure their effects, document their properties, all proper scientific work. Rick, can you build research equipment? Absolutely, Rick said. I can construct specimen containers, measurement devices, safety barriers. All standard laboratory construction. Lisa, can you prepare scientific samples for testing? Lisa nodded. I can feed test portions to research subjects using proper scientific methodology. Jake felt the plan coming together. We are not going to fight the other teams. We are going to conduct a very important scientific experiment. 10 minutes later, the final boundary contraction began. All 4 teams were forced into the central plaza. The Xanthari moved first, their hive mind coordinating. A 3-pronged attack on the humans, but Jake was ready. Amy had set up what looked like a proper scientific experiment using the laboratory's electromagnetic equipment. When the Xanthari approached, she activated the electromagnets to study the effects of magnetic fields on metallic exoskeletons. The magnetic field disrupted the Xanthari's hive-mind connection. Suddenly, the 3 warriors could not share thoughts anymore. They became confused and started working against each other instead of together. The ethereal being saw what happened and began glowing brighter, preparing a massive energy attack. But Rick had built what looked like a scientific observation platform, using metal frameworks and copper wiring, studying electrical conductivity in controlled environments. Rick announced as he activated his construction. The metal framework formed a perfect Faraday cage around the humans. When the ethereal being released its energy attack, the electricity was captured and redirected harmlessly into the ground. The Korthic warriors roared with anger and charged directly at the humans. These creatures were too smart to fall for the tricks that had worked on their smaller cousin. Lisa stepped forward with a large spoon and several containers of alien specimens. Time for scientific feeding trials, she said calmly. The first Korthic warrior swung its massive claws at her. Lisa ducked under the attack and quickly spooned a sample of the Somnalis bacteria into the creature's open mouth as it roared. Specimen 47 administered to Subject A, she announced like a proper researcher. Observing results. The Korthic warrior's eyes began to close as the bacteria took effect. It swayed on its feet for a moment, then collapsed into deep sleep. The second Korthak was more careful. It tried to keep its mouth closed and attack with just its claws. But Amy had prepared for this. Activating atmospheric dispersal system for specimen 23, she said, using laboratory equipment to spray confusion spores into the air around the creature. The spores entered the Korthak's breathing system and immediately began affecting its brain. The warrior became confused and disoriented, swinging its claws at empty air and stumbling around in circles. Lisa approached the confused creature with another spoon. Specimen 12 feeding trial on Subject B, she said, quickly serving the Korthak. A portion of paralysis moss. Within seconds, the second Korthak warrior was unable to move its muscles. It stood frozen like a statue, awake but completely paralyzed. That left the ethereal being and the 3 separated Xanthari warriors. But without their hive-mind connection, the Xanthari were much less dangerous. They were still trying to figure out why they could not share thoughts. The ethereal being attempted another energy attack, but Amy's Faraday cage deflected it again. The creature began to dim as it used up its energy reserves. Now for the final phase of our experiment, Jake said. He walked to the center of the plaza, carrying a simple metal spoon and a small container. Inside the container was a sample of all 3 specimens mixed together, bacteria that cause sleep, spores that cause confusion. and moss that caused paralysis. The ethereal being saw him coming and tried to retreat, but it was too tired from its failed attacks. The three Xanthari warriors tried to coordinate an attack, but without their hive mind, they could not work together effectively. Jake stopped in front of the ethereal being. Final specimen feeding trial, he announced clearly. Testing combined effects of multiple research samples on energy-based life forms. He carefully scooped up a portion of the mixed specimen and held it out toward the ethereal being. "This is impossible," the creature said in translated words. "You cannot feed physical substances to beings made of energy." "We will see," Jake said calmly. "This is science. We test things to learn what happens." He threw the spoonful of mixed specimens directly into the center of the ethereal being's energy form. Everyone expected the physical matter to pass right through the creature without effect. Instead, something amazing happened. The bacteria, spores, and moss began to interact with the energy that made up the creature's body. The specimens did not pass through. They were absorbed and began affecting the energy patterns themselves. The ethereal being flickered and wavered as confusion, sleep, and paralysis effects disrupted its energy matrix. Within moments, it faded away completely, unable to maintain its form. The three Xanthari warriors saw their last ally disappear and tried one final coordinated attack. But Jake was ready for them too. He had saved one more spoon of the mixed specimens. As the Xanthari charged, he calmly fed portions to each of them in turn, announcing each action as part of his scientific experiment. "Specimen feeding trial complete," he said as the last Xanthari warrior fell asleep. "All research subjects successfully treated." The plaza fell silent. Jake looked around at the unconscious and paralyzed aliens surrounding his team. Amy, Rick, and Lisa stood beside him, all holding their scientific equipment and research tools. "Simulation complete," announced a voice from everywhere at once. "Winning team, humans of Earth." The world around them began to fade as the simulation ended,